It is Jevon Wooden once again. Happy Thursday to you if you're watching this live. If you are watching the replay, good day. Today we're talking about gamifying learning to make it fun, which means making it stick. And I have someone with me, Nazma. I'm going to let you introduce yourself because you can do it better than I ever can. So please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Stefan. First of all, thank you so much for having me on your LinkedIn Live. I really appreciate it. I'm Nazma Rosado. I'm a principal consultant at Avion Consulting, and we really help organizations and individuals get better at what they do. So I am really happy to be here to talk about gamification. It's close to my heart because I like having fun.
Well, we all need a little bit more fun than we're having. I feel so. I think this is the perfect time to have this conversation. So, gamification, we hear it a lot, but a lot of times when we see it in practice, is someone taping some stuff on the floor and people walking around and playing some things. And then it's not really like at certain point learning. So, how do you actually gamify where people are learning and not just having fun, or learning and not having fun at all?
Yeah, yeah, right. Um, Different ways, right? So I think first of all, it's sort of knowing your audience and understanding what level of vulnerability are people willing to display, right? What's going to work with first time managers is not going to work with a C-suite. So just really understanding where people are and a little bit of um, how much image matters to them, how much trust is built on their team, how well versed they are in the topic as well, right? Is it something that someone might feel uncomfortable stating that they don't know or they're not
Mhm.
an expert at, right? So it's knowing your people and then designing something that really resonates with them. I think it's also really staying focused on what is the goal, what is the objective of having everyone in that room. It really is about learning, right? It's about
Mhm.
achieving something specific. Having fun is, I think, the best way to learn because it brings us back to childhood. We all like to play, right? And we learn a lot by playing. It also helps us to let our guards down. It lets us to just sort of get to know each other better and collaborate much more openly. But that all has to be grounded in, well, what are we going to do when we leave this room? Like, what have we actually improved upon, right? Or else it was a fun afternoon that really was kind of a waste of my money.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. And one of those, to your point, learning is the goal. But a lot of times, I know leaders are cutting back because they're like, we don't see the ROI on this. So with gamification, can also include some of those key metrics, because if you gamify, you're tracking some things that you may not track otherwise. You're
Right?
seeing people kind of implement right away, so there is actionable. So tell us a little bit more about how you kind of plan. Like if you're doing a session, you're helping someone, you already did the research to know who's going to be in the room, their learning styles, etc. How do you go about ensuring that it's fun, but it also sticks?
Yeah, so it really it has to do with, again, not just knowing your people, but understanding a little bit about what they're looking to get out of it, and then building around that. So I just created, actually, it was really funny how it all came about. Our firm had a like a mid-year meeting last summer, and we were off on a hike, and I was hiking with two colleagues, and between trying to catch my breath and carry on a conversation, we were talking about gamification and how useful it can be so long as it's purposeful. And a couple nights later, I was on a business trip. I think I was like in Florida somewhere, and I woke up at like 3 in the morning. It was like I had a fever dream. I was just like, oh my God, I just have like this great idea for building a board game around leadership principles. And just started fervently, like just furiously working on designing this thing. And I actually ended up creating a workshop that has a board game that goes along with it, that also has a book that I wrote that is a companion book. And it all sort of comes together in that, I created an assessment, so you can take an assessment before you go into the course, to identify, what do I need to focus on? What do I really need to learn? So now it's personalized, right? That
Mhm.
helps it stick. If it's something that you feel like, oh, this is I took an assessment and it's telling me I'm pretty good on, being empathetic. I'm not so good at being collaborative, right? So how do I really focus on that element? You go to the workshop and it's a lot of, here's the concept, let's put it into action. Here's the concept, let's put it into action. Because it's not fun when you're just sitting there and someone's talking to you for 2 days, right? It's also not meaningful if you're just going activity to activity to activity and you're not grounding it on, well, how does this work and when do I use it? And, how is this going to make me better at what I do?
Hmm.
You have a combination of the two. Now it's a little bit personalized and there's a structure and a strategy behind it, right? So you're getting that information and you're getting to practice. Most of us learn by doing. There's then, this third component, following the learning and the practicing, which is like the reinforcement of it, right? So you have the book that helps support you as you move forward, but you also have metrics that we can just, if you determine you want to have measurements, you can answer the ROI question. We can set it up so that we have a pre and a post assessment to see have you shifted by what you've learned. Right. So I think those are ways of kind of bringing it in where it kind of, because it's a little bit more personalized to you, you go in focused on knowing I need to pay more attention here. I really need to engage more here in order to get the most out of it for me. So I think that's one key component. I think another is oftentimes we will have a learning opportunity of some sort, and it's seen as like a one-time event. You come in, you sit through the class, and you're done. There's no real reinforcement, right? So the way that I built this, and this is just one thing, there's a million of really fantastic programs that are out there. But the way that I've built it is, you have scenario cards and you could reinforce by kind of practicing with yourself or with colleagues, right? So, and I've developed it in a way where, here's what it looks like if you want to use it for well-developed leaders. So a C-suite group that wants to maybe keep fine-tuning their skills, or here's what you use if it's like first-time managers, just trying to get under them. What does it mean, to make decisions, and how do I problem solve? What skills do I need to influence and to negotiate? Some of the core things that are either really boring, right, or not taught at all, or not made available to people who would really find it useful and be in a space where they could learn it, develop it, and then pass it on to others. So really long-winded answer, but it's
So,
really about having a multifaceted approach so that you're targeting individuals and you're meeting them where they are.
and you mentioned, kind of personalizing, like getting some feedback from a person. Do you recommend like the leader or the facilitator kind of look at those answers prior to and try to tie that in? Or is it more of a you do the training on the thing and then you just try to communicate in all ways? What's your recommendation on that?
My recommendation is that each person does it individually. They get their own sort of, here's your plan, right, for what
Mm.
you need to focus on, where you're stronger, where you're less strong. And then the facilitator kind of sees all of them and then sees, okay, maybe it's a group where everyone's really strong in one thing and not as strong in something else. So then I know I want to focus on that skill development for the area they're weakest. Or maybe it's across the board, right? But I kind of have a sense as to, who do I need to engage in this particular area because this is what they need to really focus on, right? So it's kind of approaching it from both ends. You taking ownership for this is what I need to upskill in, and then myself as a facilitator saying, well, how do I make it most impactful for you? And that's by knowing who's showing up at that session.
Yeah, no, I think as I've been in this space, facilitating, doing workshops, even like keynoting, one of the words that continues to come up is modulation, like creating modular types of experiences where you can kind of pivot as needed and kind of base it on what's going on within the audience that you're facilitating to. Are you starting to see that as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's all about being flexible. I mean,
Hmm.
we have all of these different generations in the workforce right now. People learn in very different ways. People are attracted to very different things. People have importance that they place on different things. We're evolving very quickly, right? AI is, very quickly becoming embedded in what we do and how we do it. And so it's about understanding, where the individuals are and then meeting them there and having that ability to be modular and to say, okay, you prefer to sort of do, you rather do something online than actually do it like in the workspace. So there's an online app that you can use to play this game, right?
Mhm.
And to kind of get that assessment. It's kind of making sure that we're not boxing anyone out by not being mindful of the different iterations that work for different people, right? You want to be as inclusive and as impactful as possible by having a modular approach. It's easiest to do that. Right. And I think also if we did, like, let's say, you did an assessment, and as a facilitator, I look at all the assessments, I can really decide, what, this is something everyone is so off the charts good at. We're going to spend no time on this and instead really customize it for what the needs of the group are.
Yeah, yeah, I'm finding that's very impactful. Now we're talking about gamification here, and gamifying something can look different in a lot of ways. Are you finding that there are any preferences that actually stick, and people are finding more favorable than others?
I think that the thing that I find that sticks the most is when we get people into a room, a physical room, more so than a virtual room. Both work, but I think people are really sort of, enjoying meeting other people and being in people's presence in a way that maybe we took for granted in the past, right? So having folks be in that space and then the sharing, the dialogue, the learning from one another is really, I feel like, what's resonating quite a bit with folks. When you're doing this gameplay sort of, environment, there's a lot of laughter. There's a safety in failing and getting something wrong, right? And then to be like, oh yeah, I could have done that. I didn't think about that or whatever. And there's a lot of sharing of ideas. There's a lot of support that emerges, and that strengthens connections and builds new relationships. So you sort of get these byproducts
Hmm.
that are fantastic. It happens remotely as well. If you do a virtual session, it's just much more, it's much more, intimate, and therefore happens faster if you're in person.
Yeah, for 100%. And I know, after COVID, a lot of folks have been like virtual, spaced out, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, it's great, but that nothing like that energy that's in the room and in person. And I'm seeing a lot of my clients wanting me to actually be there, which I prefer as well. I feel like the virtual space, you see this little box for a few hours or even an hour, and it's like, okay, all right, this is great and all going into breakouts, but doing it physically, and also it hits that tactile component. Some people are kinesthetic; they have to be actually physically touching something or doing something. So I
Exactly.
think you're spot on with that here. So you mentioned AI and future work and all of that stuff. Where are you seeing learning and gamification going in the next few years?
I think it's going to, I think like all things, it's a pendulum, right? So we're going to go too far on one end, kind of snap back on the other end, and then land somewhere in the middle. I think it's just another tool that we'll have in our toolbox in terms of how do we build things faster? How do we make things more complete? How are we able to do research, more deeply? All of those types of things. But also, it's a new modality we can utilize in training, right? So being able to create an assessment really quickly and then maybe make an online component of it, or, I created a game and was able to create an app from the game in a much shorter amount of time than I would have been able to do 5 years ago. Right. So it's really like leveraging all of those things and then being able to bring it to folks where they can, maybe say, I'm really comfortable playing something on my phone. Right. It's easy to do it on my train ride home or whatever it might be. Or someone saying, you know what, I actually like getting my team together and spending that time with them and doing, doing something very tactically, as you said, or very, manually. So having those options and opportunities, I think, is where we're going to head. I think kind of like working from home, there's going to be, a whole lot of affinity for, oh my gosh, AI is so great. And then, it kind of, it's like, well, but we've lost a couple of things along the way. Let's pull it back a little bit. That's just a natural, trajectory of us accepting and adapting to new
Right.
technology.
Yeah, and that's goes with the six phases of change, right? One of them is kind of regression, falling back, and then after you have that new baseline. So I think it's going to be the same type of pendulum as you said. So for you, like, what made you mentioned you love having fun? So how did you like in your path? to gamification and learning and development and all those things, how did you say like this is the thing I want to focus on playing?
I don't know. I think it's just it's one element of what I focus on. I just try to
Mhm.
bring it into everything that I do, right? Life is too short. I mean, we're so serious all the time. We have so many things that we're juggling all at the same time. I'm a mom of four, right? So I have my full time job, and then I have my full time job, right?
Yes,
And
salute to
it's
you
pretty
on that one. I have one, and it's still.
it's just everything's relative. When you have one, it's unbelievable, and then you have two, and you have three. And we adjust, and that's the
You're
wonderful
right.
thing about humans. Our ability to learn and grow and adapt is amazing. And I think I look at it as I have such a limited amount of time in my day, and I have so much I need to get done. And I also want to enjoy my life. Well, why don't I bring those things together, right? I love the work that I do, and I love the time I spend with my family. And it's because so much of that time is spent smiling and laughing and engaging and building relationships and in sharing information and building knowledge, but in a way that's just it feels natural and it's organic and it's not so prescribed, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I love that.
I
Love that.
guess my outlook in life is like, you can choose to be miserable or you can choose to be happy. I choose to be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Joy is your responsibility at the end of the day. So whatever that looks like, your perception and everything else has to tie line to that if it's one of your values. So I know a lot of leaders, L&D folks, they're agreeing with us 100%. They're like, yeah, of course, gamification. Of course, we want the learning to stick. Of course, we want to do this and that. But we have some leadership who actually makes the decisions and fixes our budgets that doesn't necessarily believe in this. How do we sell it to them?
Yeah. So I think it's really about being outcome focused, right? When we talk about something like gamification, we tend to talk about it in terms of here's the mechanism or here's the methodology and here's why we think it works. What leaders want to hear is what's the impact, right? What's my ROI and why is this the right solution? And I think when you talk about it in those terms, what's the actual data, right? Based on research on using gamification, you can see it supports 49% stronger, better learning, right? That's meaningful. You get 80% higher engagement, right? And that translates towards 40% of improved retention. Um, that's real learning, right? And while you're doing all of that, you're strengthening relationships and building collaborative units within your working space. I mean, it's hard to say, well, we don't need that, or we can't really, invest in that when it's like, well, really, because people are going to learn more. They're going to therefore be more engaged. They're going to want to stay and help others stay because they're going to be better leaders. That's an impactful, powerful thing, right? And especially when we're talking about skills that we don't tend to focus on, right? Like my background is in pharma and biotech, right? And I spent almost 30 years working in pharma and biotech, and
Mhm.
it's a great industry, and so much of it is focused on what do we need to do, how do we move fast, how do we get medications to patients, and staying focused. What can sometimes get lost is did we really train our people on how to lead other people in getting the best out of those people, right? Have we taught them, how to be empathetic? Have we taught them, what performance means, right? We talk about communicating all the time, but it's not a one-way communication, right? So it's like putting something behind the words that we say that really sticks with people and allows them to make changes in how they operate on a daily basis. That's impactful for a leader to hear, right? And
Yep.
then just drawing on that one industry that I spent most of my career in, reorganizations, mergers and acquisitions. I mean, that happens every single day. It's just like, the name of your company today is not going to be the name of your company a year from now. It's just a very vibrant, innovative space. But we don't really dive into change management as well as we need to. We don't prepare people for how do you lead through those changes, right? So all of those types of things, when you're creating solutions that are not just, very specific, based on SOPs or based on here's a new practice or a new procedure or a new policy, but where it's actually how do you be a better at what you do and better, sort of corporate citizen. For those types of things, I think it's really about helping leaders understand the true impact of what they're getting for that investment.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a few key points. One being the aspect of a lot of industries. I work with a lot of technically focused and inclined industries where that role and that function is very important to the bottom line. So they often they feel like they don't have time to invest in these foundational skills like communication and the empathy and emotional intelligence and all that. So I'm glad you're bringing that up because we have to also understand that there's an end here. Like you need to be great technically, and if you want to be a people leader, you have to have those foundational and strategic skills like change management and change adaptation, for example. I love that we're talking about gamifying and modulating and stuff like that because if I know, for example, as a leader, that I want someone to lead a team. And they came from a technically focused background, then I know that the training that we're creating, that we're gamifying, probably needs to focus a little bit more on those foundational skills rather than the doer aspect. So that's great, and it ties into that common thread here is ensuring that the training is relevant, not just for the now, but also for the future we're hoping to create within our organizations.
Yeah, I mean, I think, oftentimes, like, part of my role is as an executive coach. Executive coaching, as an example, has been seen as either a punishment or like a blessing, right? You get an executive coach if you're kind of on your way out, and we're kind of trying to demonstrate that we try to help fix you and we couldn't, right? That's a very old way of how executive coaching was perceived and utilized. The newer concept is it's developmental, right? It's not because you've done anything wrong, but it's to support you, to help you identify where you need to fine tune and, sort of spit shine, various areas of your leadership capability so that you're stronger and better and ready for promotion, ready for, leadership and things like that. I love what I do. I love connecting with these leaders and, engaging with them and seeing that change over time. One thing that's missing though is that that's usually at a certain level, right? That's usually at, senior leaders get executive coaches.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
how do you get to senior leadership, right? How do you even get to that baseline level where something like that is available to you? I'm not suggesting we need to have executive coaches for, entry level positions and all the way through, but I think we could start building programs that help start developing some of those core competencies that's necessary to be successful to help you escalate that ladder, right? We talk about succession planning. Well, usually it's like, well, who will replace you, one or two down below you? But also think of it in terms of if you're standing at the bottom of the ladder, what are the rungs I need to climb? Not just the role, but what is the knowledge and the skill that I need to have? Some of it is pure skill, like how do you program or how do you, do whatever the it is that you have to do. A lot of it is how do you do it in terms of your interactions with others? Because most of what we do, we can't do alone, right? Or we shouldn't do
Right.
alone. To be done collaboratively. And with that collaboration comes a slew of different competencies that tend to be considered as soft skills and kind of backburnered. But really, if you're not able to have executive presence and you're not able to really, compel others to listen to what it is that you have to say and to buy into the solutions that you're proposing, and for you to be able to advocate for others and all of those things, you're actually being held back a little bit from that rise through the ladder, right? So why don't we take like more of a two-pronged approach? Help leaders with what they need, giving them their coaching and whatever else they may need, but also start developing leaders sooner, right? Sooner in that stream, so that we're helping to really make sure that succession is not something that we have to think about, oh, do I have someone who's really prepared to do this? Everyone has that leadership capability if you've invested in them. It's just about, do they have the experience and the knowledge of the actual, technical aspects of the role.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. And I still, John Maxwell said it years ago, but I still love that he said leadership is influence, it's not the role or the title, because that
Correct.
means and it gives agency and ownership to everyone, no matter if you're that entry level person all the way up to that, even the board level. right? Understanding that there's some a part that we play in creating that culture that we so we see on our walls and our coffee mugs and all this other stuff, right? So I wholeheartedly agree. But no, I appreciate this. I know we're almost close to time. We could talk about this all day. I feel like Nazma. So we appreciate all that you have given us as far as the knowledge of gamification. If there was one thing that the audience should take away from this discussion, what would you want that to be?
I think if there was one way, one thing to take away from this conversation, it would be really get to know your audience, get to know, what resonates with them, and then meet them where they are, right? The most basic thing that we've all learned to do at some point in our time is to interact with others and have fun while doing it. It goes back to, everything I needed to learn, I learned in kindergarten, right? That whole concept. Sometimes it's just a really great level setter for everyone to just kind of be in a space where something is new. And I don't think it's really about, drawing boxes on the floor and then, moving into them. That
Yeah.
is some learning that can be done. And I do think that that is effective in many spaces. But I think if that's the only thing we think of when we think about gamification, we're really limited in really understanding all of the various wonderful kinds of ways we can bring in simulations and scenario based learning and things like that, that gives you a very big return on investment because it's putting you into real world situations, right? So understand, know your people, meet them where they are, give them what they need, and help them excel.
All right, appreciate it. How can everyone connect with you?
You can find me, at Avion Consulting, which is the firm that I work for. So if you found avionconsulting.com, you would find me there. You can also find me, I have my own website, nasmarosauto.com. But I am probably most often found via LinkedIn. I am a super user. I'm on there posting all the time and connecting. I'm always looking for expanding my network and really being of service to others. If people are looking for something or have a question on something, I'm here to help. So I'd say LinkedIn, avionconsulting.com, or nasmarosauto.com.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Make sure y'all go connect with Nazma. If there's one thing I want you to take away as well, is that gamification doesn't have to happen in the workplace. You can literally gamify your life. So think of ways that you can start making the things you get to do on a daily basis fun. And we appreciate you as always. I am Jevon Wooden once again. Connect with me at javonwooden.com. If you are not following me on YouTube, search my name, connect, subscribe so you don't miss great conversations like the one we just had. And remember, until next time, to keep ascending, I'll see you soon.